Hey there everybody, Elle here. I'm going to do a quick review of one of my favorite tarot decks. That's right, it is the Alchemical Tarot by Robert M. Place, and I am specifically reviewing the renewed 4th edition. There are so many older editions of this deck out there. This is the one that is available right now at the time that I am making this video. You can go to robertmplacetarot.com and you can order it through there. You can also get the accompanying book on his website at the moment too. This one has also in the past been a little bit hard to get your hands on. I do see it up on Amazon all the time, but it's usually through like a third-party seller or something. Okay, this deck, this is the box it comes in. It's just your standard sort of box. That's what the backs of the cards look like also there. I'm going to talk about all that stuff. Oh, this deck is fascinating. It's wonderful. But it does not come with, you know, a little white book or anything. You can actually, older editions of this deck previously came with a little white book. But he does have the little white book up on his website, also at robertmplacetarot.com. You can download it, you can print it out, you can just go online and read it. But what is sort of really kind of important with this deck, especially if you haven't spent a lot of time studying alchemy and alchemical symbolism and the alchemical process, this book is really going to be sort of invaluable to you. What he does is he goes through here, there's all this great history of the tarot in the beginning, and a great sort of history of alchemy even. He goes through some of the processes, a lot of what you're going to see in the tarot deck. And then he will specifically go through in great detail. Where do I have it? Somewhere in here. Here we go. You know, a couple pages on each of the Major Arcana, and that really is the main focus, even of this deck, you know, the alchemical processes that he's associated with each one of the Major Arcana cards is absolutely beautiful. It's just amazing what he's done here. But then he does go through, there we go, and there's a picture of every single one of the Minor Arcana cards too, in a little bit less detail. But he still gives you the meanings of all 78 cards, divinatory meanings, but also sort of how they relate to this alchemical tarot that he's created. Okay, let me grab my deck. Okay, so this is how I keep my alchemical tarot, in a nice black bag with a beautiful eagle. Love that guy. And I did edge my deck too. So when you get this originally, obviously it will have you know, those pure white sides. I edged it in like a antique, almost green kind of a gold, which, oh my god, it worked so good with the green borders that there are on the back and sort of this gold, golden color of the back. So these backs too, aren't they just, oh my god, it blows my mind. They're so beautiful. A lot of the symbolism that's on here, and even the specific symbols and stuff, are included sort of all over or throughout the Major Arcana that I'm going to go through now, so we'll sort of explain all that symbolism as we go through. Okay, let's jump right in. Here you see the Fool. So he sort of represents like the newbie alchemist, almost. His goal, really, is to obtain the Philosopher's Stone, and that is what that is a symbol of right there, a symbol for the Philosopher's Stone. He's blindfolded because, you know, he's sort of confused. He doesn't really know he doesn't even know what matter is going to be transformed into gold. He doesn't know what he's going to transform into gold yet, you know, through his alchemical process, on his alchemical journey. And he even has, I love that he's done this here, he uses a lot of animal symbolism throughout the entire deck. And it's not even, he doesn't even just keep it to like popular alchemical animals, right? Like normally on old alchemical illustrations, you'll see lots of like eagles and ravens and lions and serpents, right? I certainly don't see too many rabbits and dogs and things like that, but he's got all, he's an animal lover, I guess. So he's thrown all this stuff into his deck, and it just makes it, you know, all the more rich for it. Next is the Magician. Now, this is Mercury or Hermes. Now, this card is also sort of the literal matter that we're going to transform into gold, right? This card is what the Fool is seeking. So neither of these actually represent a specific alchemical process. That starts next in the High Priestess. But what you can see here is that, it also represents, the anima mundi, if you will, the end result. So it's the prima materia, it's where you start in the alchemical process, and it's where you end at the same time, the anima mundi. If you look at the symbols on the card down here, you see the symbols for earth, air, fire, and water. But you also, right there, hello, have a beautifully done symbol for Mercury. And I say beautifully done because it's done in a really interesting way. It's actually the symbol for the moon, the symbol for the sun, both on the cross of matter. So it's the masculine or the feminine and the masculine combined, or united, as above, so below. I think it's really cool, actually, up here. This is something we'll talk about a little bit later. He has, sort of half of the signs of the zodiac up here, but it starts in a very specific place. It starts at Cancer. So this is sort of the wet path in alchemy, too, that we're starting to head down here. I mean, he just knows his shit, man. Oh, it's so good. Okay, moving right along, here is the High Priestess, and this is where we actually begin to start with an actual alchemical process. So the alchemical process that is taking place or starting here in the High Priestess is the process of dissolution. And dissolution is the process by which the materia prima that we spoke about in the Magician card, right, gets separated out into its separate elements. It gets dissolved into its separate elements. And the specific element that it's being, separated out into in this card is water. So you have the symbol for water up here and the symbol for dissolution he put on the card here too. Which just works for the High Priestess, right? She's like the archetypal, symbol or image for water and for the unconscious or the subconscious. And then in the next card, the next 4 cards are all going to be the process of dissolution, where the High Priestess was water, the Empress is earth. And you can see the symbol for earth and the symbol for dissolution. Isn't the artwork just absolutely amazing? All of these images were taken from old alchemical drawings, and then he just redrew them. They're all from like the 1600s, very similarly to how the Tarot of the Holy Light was done. Also, just so you guys know, a lot of these sort of alchemical symbols that he placed on the card, he doesn't really talk about specifically what everything means in his book. I think most of these symbols were added for this edition of the cards. The older editions had some alchemical symbols on them, but certainly not this many. So yeah, I certainly, I'm familiar enough with alchemical symbolism that I was able to recognize most of them, but I could see that being a little confusing for some people. The Little White Book certainly doesn't go over it, and most of them aren't really touched upon in his book either. But yeah, that's all right. I'll tell you what most of them mean. So here we have the Emperor, and we're still in the process of dissolution here. And here we are, the Emperor's air. So you see a symbol for air and the symbol for dissolution. Oh my goodness. I gotta say though, I love the way that he has transformed these old alchemical images into just stunningly clear. That's one of the things I love about his artwork. It's very, it's almost very simple and precise, and it's so beautiful in that way. I just love it. And then we come to the Hierophant, and this is still dissolution again, dissolution of fire. He represents fire here. Beautiful Hierophant. Okay, here is the Lover's card. I'm going to grab one more thing. Okay, I got it. Here are the 2 amazing Lover's cards that you get. It's actually a 79 card deck that you get when you buy this deck. Obviously, I have chosen this one to stay in my deck. I don't know what it is, actually. I'm certainly not offended by sort of explicitly sexual images by any means. I am certainly no prude. You know, Marielle is my favorite tarot deck. But there's just something about this card. It just resonated with me a little bit more. So I didn't even edge this one, did I? Yeah, no. But you do have the option. I believe that this is the one that he originally intended to put in the deck, and he was sort of censored out of it. So now in the new editions, you get the option to have both cards and choose which one you like. They do both have the same. You know, most of the top of the card is actually very, very similar, the same symbols and Cupid and everything. It's sort of like this is the moment when you first come together, and that's sort of where you end up. Yay, sex. So what's sort of happening here in this card is this is, you know, the completion of the dissolution process of the prima materia that we were talking about. This is the coming together, the uniting. And actually the symbol that he chose to put on the card here right up there, this is another one. He doesn't actually say it anywhere in his book, but that is a symbol for amalgamation. And amalgamation it means, you know, combining or uniting. So that's really the process that's taking place here. I feel like, you know, if you didn't really know what all these symbols were, it's, you know, they don't take up the majority of the card or anything, so it's sort of simple to kind of ignore them, I guess. But I love having them and recognizing them. It just adds a whole nother layer of meaning to the card for me. Beautiful. All right, guys, moving right along. This is the Chariot. Beautiful, right? I feel like the imagery that he's chosen to put on the cards is really still so familiar and almost classic in a way. You know, I think if people who are more accustomed to reading like a Rider-Waite-Smith style deck, I think they'll really be able to use this deck. It's not going to feel so far removed from anything that you're more familiar with. But let's see here. The process that Robert M. Place has chosen to sort of correspond with the number 7 card, with the Chariot, is sublimation. And oh my god, it's just the perfect thing for this card. I'm not going to get too detailed on the alchemical process or anything here, but yeah, it just works so good. He's even here got the symbol for Mercury, salt, and sulfur. They're even up in the wheel right up here. But basically what those represent, they're sort of like the Holy Trinity in alchemy, you know? It's like the 3 parts of the soul, and then it's also mind, body, and spirit. You know, Mercury is your spirit, sulfur is the mind, and salt the body. Isn't that beautiful? Love the Chariot. Next up is Justice, and here in this deck, Justice represents the alchemical process of disposition. Which actually I was not familiar with this symbol. I'm assuming that that's a symbol for that process of disposition. But anyway, the process has to do with sort of like weight and proportion and things like that. So, ooh, baby, it works. Oh, this is one of my favorite cards in the deck. I love this Hermit. Isn't he just gorgeous? And the process that's sort of taking place here in the Hermit is the process of exaltation, it's called. Now, I do want to explain that one just a little bit. It really works here too. It's sort of the process where you take that materia prima, or that prime material, the original material that you're working with, and it's sort of dissolved into like a more pure form of itself. So yeah, that's the Hermit, right? Oh my god. And also all the sort of symbols that he's chosen to use on the card here, the Ouroboros, the serpent eating its tail, the raven, these are all very much symbols of the blackening process in alchemy, also called the Negredo. All right, let's go there. So there's 4 sort of phases in alchemy, right? You start with the Negredo, the blackening process, and then you move on to the whitening, also called the Albedo, and then into the yellowing process, which is called the Citrinitas or something like that, and then your final process is the Rubedo, or the reddening process. I think it's wonderful what Robert M. Place has done is he's actually separated out the Major Arcana into the different phases. So let's see if I remember. Everything from the Magician to the Devil is the blackening process. The whitening is the Tower the Tower through the Moon card. The Sun and Judgment represent the yellowing process, and the World is then your reddening process. So again, here on the Hermit card, right, you have all these amazing symbols of the Negredo, or the blackening phase, which is the phase of destroying and breaking apart. It's where you're destroying your ego. You know, the entire alchemical process is really, you know, it takes place in the soul. It's a spiritual process. But yeah, so the ruler also of the Negredo phase is Saturn, or also represents lead. But Saturn, right? What does he do? He devours his own children, right? So you have like the Ouroboros, the snake here, eating his own tail, and then you even have, you know, the black bird, the raven, the crow. Loud truck. But he's also, you know, a symbol of death in his blackness. Yeah, one of my favorite hermit cards of all time. Beautiful. So next we have the Wheel of Fortune. And in this card, he associates it with the alchemical process of circulation. So you have, like, you know, the 4 elements here. Earth is represented with sort of a traditional symbol, but then he's associated the Trinity here. So you have Mercury and salt and sulfur sort of as the other elements here. There's also a really, really cool sort of play with the fixed and the volatile, right? So you have the fixed sort of dragon down here, and the volatile, the red dragon with the wings. Wheel of Fortune. And that brings us to Strength. Oh, I love this card too. So Strength is representative. So Strength is representative of the process of fermentation. And that process sort of involves like raising something, you know, to a higher form. Sort of almost like when spirit enters matter, you know, it elevates it. So that's, you know, that's sort of what's happening here. And just like on all of your strength cards, you have a lion representing like your untamed animal nature, you know, your libido. And he even says in his book, the reason that the lion is green in this deck is because it represents Mercury, but sort of as like a deadly poison, one that is going to be transmuted into like a healing elixir in the end, you know. And then you still have your woman or your virgin here, who represents, you know, the higher self, who will of course tame that lower animal nature through love. And then the symbols on this card here that he doesn't really talk about, this one I believe is a symbol for like sulfuric acid, and this one is definitely a symbol for boiling. So it works, you know. Strength. So next you have the Hanged Man, who, according to the wonderful Robert M. Place, the Hanged Man is associated with the alchemical process of calcination. Calcination has to do with like matter sort of being reduced to ash, right? So you still have your sacrifice here, maybe your sacrifice of the ego, right? On the cross of matter, you know, in the world. Beautiful. Hanged Man. Next we have Death, and the alchemical process associated with death is called putrefaction, and that is what that symbol up there represents also. That literally represents the alchemical process of putrefaction. So putrefaction is sort of where the material that you're working with is broken down. You know, it's dissolved, it separates, it rots. You know, death is necessary if what you are trying to create, or if what you're trying to do is to be reborn into a higher state. You know, it's putrefaction and death. All these things are just part of the process. And then actually that's sort of what you've created so far that he's standing on down there. You know, this is the alchemical vessel almost. It's that blackened product, which is the result of all the work that you've done thus far up until this point. And then you even have, again, I love that, the raven up there sitting on his shoulder, representative of the entire nigredo or blackening process. So next up is temperance, and the alchemical process associated with temperance is called distillation. And he has done just an amazing job here of sort of representing on the card what distillation actually is. Now, of course, he didn't come up with this image. He redrew it. It came from an old alchemical drawing. But what he chose to put on the card, it blows my mind. It's so perfect. This sort of what's going on up here is a perfect way to explain the process of distillation. It has to do with like evaporation and precipitation, right? The water evaporates up and then rain sort of precipitates down. That's what's going on up here. It's so cool because, the card temperance in itself is the alchemical card. When Crowley calls number 14 art, what he's really referring to is the art of alchemy, of the alchemical process. So some of the other symbols here, like this is supposed to be a dunghill down here with a rose bush growing out of it. That's right, a dunghill. But it's beautiful in that it's like this perfection and this life sort of coming out of this chaos and this death almost, And then this symbol up here, I believe is supposed to be, or I'm assuming it's supposed to be a symbol of distillation. The symbol for distillation that I'm a little bit more used to looks just a little bit different than that, but that's sort of what he's done with all the other cards, try to put the symbol for that alchemical process on the card. So I'm assuming that's a symbol of distillation. Yeah, temperance. And that brings us to the devil. And the devil is associated with the alchemical process of coagulation, as in solve et coagula, to come together. The symbol up in the corner here is it's like a symbol of the ascending node and has to do with sublimation, right? So this card is also cool because it is the last card, according to Robert and Place, in the nigredo or the blackening phase. And what you see here, you've got this merging of male and female in the hermaphrodite form here, right? And they're standing on this dragon who actually represents the devil on this card. But they're all standing on, does that look familiar, right? That's the, that's the product so far. That's the alchemical vessel that we saw before in the death card too. I think that I love that the male and female is also sort of shown in the groin there, but illustrated as a red and white triangles that forms that hexagram or tetrahedron shape. Isn't that great? So that brings us to the Tower card, which, really does, this one looks very, very different from most other cards, right? He's sort of likened the idea of the tower to what in alchemy is called the Athanor. Sorry if I mispronounced that. Athanor? It's basically an oven, though, is what it is. And actually, even in alchemical text, they refer to it as a tower because it sort of looks like one anyway. So, my God, what a great idea. But it also, the process that he's associated with this card is called, or what he calls the greater dissolution. And it has to do with this sort of breaking through, from the darkness of that nigredo phase and into the whitening of the albedo phase. And that's exactly what this sort of white lightning coming through up here is supposed to represent, the beginning of that next phase. And the end of the blackening phase where we were destroying and tearing everything apart. So it really does fit with the theme of the tower in tarot also. Isn't that great? All right, next up is the Star card, and I'm so excited to talk about this one, actually. I really wanted to talk about it when I did my review of the Tarot of the Holy Light, because Christine Payne Towler actually uses the same image in her deck. And it's a very famous alchemical image, it's full of, symbolism that you will come across if you study alchemy. But I've also heard it described, this stuff sort of described as squirting titties. And Oh, I can't. Oh my God. It's like, it's ignorant, you know, and it's even a little bit insulting because this is just such a powerful image, you know. It's chock full of symbolic metaphor, you know. So anyway, what you have here is this is, you know, a mermaid, and the mermaid is a symbol for the anima mundi, you know, the world soul. And she's got, you know, these two streams, one from each breast. These are life-giving fluids that she's offering. One is blood and one is milk. That's what's happening there. So you have the red and you have the white. You have the wet and the dry, the masculine and the feminine. And they can even be likened to sort of what you see on your average star card, right? When she's pouring from the jugs, the two liquids. It's the same thing. Or she's just pouring water, but you know, she's got them from two different jugs. Anyway, you also have, you know, just like on your average star card, the seven stars up at the top. But what he's done here, I think, is just great. He's labeled all the different stars with the symbols of the 7 planets of the ladder. And I think that's really cool too, to sort of draw your attention to, because in alchemy, that's part of what's happening is how the 7 celestial or all the planetary bodies sort of affect us, you know, as souls. So anyway, the alchemical process associated with this card is, purification by water or baptism. And I think what he's done right here with this symbol is amazing. This is a symbol of the descending node, which has to do with purification. And then he's got the symbol for water right in it. So it's literally a purification by water, you know, or baptism. And then this is also, you know, the second card of the albedo process, of the whitening process. So moving right along into the third card of the albedo or whitening process, we have the moon. So this is actually like the culmination, right? This is the last card of the albedo process or the whitening process. And it doesn't so much have to do with a specific alchemical process. According to Robert M. Place, it has... it sort of like symbolizes the white stone that you've created thus far. In the next card, in the sun card, when we have the Heros Gamos, right, or the sacred marriage, which is the uniting of sun and moon, dark and light, male and female, they together will give birth to the red stone, and then to the philosopher's stone, the golden goal at the end. What else is going on here? But you have, you still have your crab. You sort of put it up in the sky. It's like a zodiac symbol with Cancer. And then this symbol right here is a alchemical symbol for silver. I love that. I want that tattooed on me. It's such a beautiful symbol, isn't it? Which is just perfect for the moon too, you know, this deck. Oh my god, it works. All right, and that brings us to the sun card, where you can clearly see that Heros Gamos, that sacred marriage, that union that I was talking about just now, right? So this is the joining, the merging of opposites, you know, it's enlightenment itself. You have here reached the third stage in the great alchemical opus called the yellowing phase, or the citrinitas. And then up here at the top, this is the alchemical symbol for amalgamation, which literally is uniting, you know? Yeah. Next up, we have Judgment. Oh, I love this Judgment card. The color in the angel's wings just blows my mind every time I look at it. Isn't that beautiful? So the Judgment card represents the process of multiplication, which has to do with like reviving or resurrecting. You know, at this process, you're using sort of the stone that you've created so far to transmute base metals, or what is dead and what is inactive, you know, into gold, or what is active, what is spiritual, what is important, you know? This is where sort of everything that you killed in the Negredo, or the blackening phase, can be revived here in the yellowing phase, the Citrinitas phase. It's just such a wonderful way to look at the tarot, isn't it? It really makes you look at tarot in a very different way. Love this deck. And that brings us to the World card. And this is, you know, the anima mundi. It's the world soul. That's what's there. This card is literally the culmination of the great alchemical work. it's the final phase, the rubedo, the reddening phase, where you've actually formed or created the philosopher's stone. You know, all that was hidden is now exposed. She's naked here. And you have a lot of power at this stage, you know, including the power to sort of unite with your higher self, also to like prolong life and conquer death. It's the merging of yourself with the anima mundi, you know, with the world soul. That's what's happening here. Congratulations, you've done it. All right, so I'm not going to go into as much detail with the rest of these cards here. I am just briefly going to go through the Minor Arcana and show you how beautiful these cards are. So for the most part, all these images still sort of come from, you know, old alchemical illustrations. In the book for the Major Arcana, he will definitely show you or tell you exactly what painting or what illustrations everything comes from and what books they were in. He doesn't go into as much detail with all of these images, and I feel like he's taken a lot more, you know, of his own ideas and sort of fleshed out the images in the Minor Arcana. But a lot of them are still very familiar, sort of very close to a Rider-Waite-Smith in a lot of ways, and, you know, still a lot of them are very, very different, but I feel like the general gist of things won't be too far off if you are a Rider-Waite-Smith person. Here's your Eight of Wands. I love how he's depicted the wands here instead of, you know, how they are in Rider-Waite-Smith decks where it's like a sprouting branch. You actually get the element really associated here. So they are all, you know, on fire, literally. There's fire. And there's your Phoenix and the Ten of Wands. Love that image. And then in his core cards, you have ladies, which I love. And then he still calls them knights, kings, and queens. And there's your Queen of Staffs. Sorry, there's staffs in this deck, actually, not wands. I apologize. Staffs. And then all the kings actually are sort of an elemental animal associated with that suit. So in that one you had a dragon for the fire suit. And then on into the cups. And all the cups are actually called vessels in this deck. Which is perfect for alchemy. It's very important, you know, the vessel is where everything happens. The vessel is a metaphor for yourself, you know, this is where the work takes place. And then he doesn't actually have much written on the cards too. I talked about this a little bit before, but you know, he has the Roman numeral for the number of the cards, and then just the sort of alchemical symbol, which I think most tarot people are very familiar with at this point, right? They're all actually on the card here, which is perfect. You have your water, your fire, your earth, and your air. Oh, I love that one. Isn't that great? So light. Five of Cups, or vessels, excuse me. Call them cups, shit, whatever. So in the book too, he really goes into, you know, he talks about it and in how it relates to the alchemical process, all the cards, but he really does give fantastic general divinatory meanings for everything. It's really a fantastic book if you can get your hands on it. I think that you might be at a little bit of a disadvantage if you only have the Little White Book with this deck, unless you are very fluent in alchemical symbolism and language and processes. Knight of Vessels. Oh, there's our mermaid again. By the way, that symbol I was talking about on the star card before, with the streams of life-giving fluid, is also on the back of the card here. The back of this card is just, oh my god, aren't they amazing? She's literally wearing this dress with all the planetary symbols on her. You've got Mercury, you've got salt, you've got sulfur, you've got purification and putrefaction, and oh, it's all right there on the Philosopher's Stone. And then, even, what do you call it? A salamander and an eagle, and I'm going to stop now. Great, great deck. And then the king, or the animal associated, is the king here, and it's a whale for the cups. I love that. Sorry, I'll stop covering the cards. I love, love, love. I think this is the same thing I loved about the wings and the judgment card, how the way he uses color for this deck. I'm not sure if it used to look like this in the older editions or if this is something you sort of actually changed subtly. The way the colors sort of transmute one into another is beautiful in this deck. Can you see that? It's such a slow, like, gradation down to from red to green. Love. Two of Swords here. More animals. You have an owl here, which just works for the Two of Swords, right? Owls and wisdom and thought. And then a sort of familiar image in the Three of Swords. Four of Swords. He's got a unique style of artwork that is just all his own, you know? You can always tell when you're looking at a Robert M. Place deck. The only other one of his that I have actually is the Tarot of the Sevenfold Mystery, which is a wonderful, wonderful deck. But at some point, I think I would love to experiment with some of his others. He's got the Buddha Tarot, I think it's called, the Buddha or the Buddhist Tarot. And then even the Vampire Tarot looks like a lot of fun. Look at that creepy guy. Oh, I love. Nine of Swords. And your Ten of Swords. Bloody body in the road. And then I love that he went with ladies here. I much prefer that to male pages. It balances out the courts, you know? I feel like it really should be two male and two female. And then even during my readings, I feel like, you know, when they are referring to people, that it's very interchangeable when it comes to pages and knights, you know, that they very rarely, you know, refer to, you know, that specific sex. I find that much more common with the kings and queens, right? Tell me if your experience is similar. When kings and queens come up as people, they do, for me anyway, tend to represent, you know, a male if it's the king and a female if it's the queen. Love that card. It's like that classic serpent eating its tail, the Ouroboros, but it's a lion eating an eagle. Be nice, guys. Three of Coins. Does he call them coins? Shit, I forget. Yep, coins. Three of Coins, and you have the symbol for Earth and the Roman numeral 3. And, oh, look at that, Mercury, Sulfur, and is that a symbol for salt? I'm assuming it is. Four of Coins. I love he's burying it for later. It's like there really is a scene taking place on these cards. So whereas you know, I know a lot of people think that they have a hard time sort of using the other deck that I was talking about, the Tarot of the Holy Light, with all, even though it uses a lot of the same sort of imagery, there's something very simple and something actually happening in each of these Minor Arcana cards that I think makes it a lot more accessible to the style most people have for reading tarot, you know, where they're going into the card and they're pulling out what's happening on the card to help make sense during their readings. The Ladder of Planets, like your chakras. Your Eight of Coins, Nine of Coins. That dude's got a lot of coins. I actually love that card though, isn't that great? It's even like an Eye of Horus on his eye over there. And that gold coin, gold and silver too. And then your Lady of Coins. Your Knight. He looks tough, right? I love the Queen of Coins here. Well, that abundance, right? That cornucopia. And then the animal for the coins is the lion. Doesn't that just work? He's so regal. And that brings us back. So real quick, let me just show you guys one more thing. So I showed you guys the book before. That is Alchemy and the Tarot by Robert M. Place. This is also another one of his books. This is a much easier to get your hand on book. And I just wanted to mention it real briefly because I think it is a great book. It doesn't go into a lot of detail, really, with the history or the symbolism or the divination or anything. It doesn't go into explicit detail, but it is a great sort of primer to tarot history and tarot symbolism. And he writes amazingly. Like, it's great. So the other thing I wanted to recommend to you guys, if you are interested in learning a little bit more about alchemy in the tarot, this is a book by, yeah, that's right, Joseph Campbell wrote just a few pages in here. It's not the whole book. He only has like 10 or 20 pages where he talks about the Marseille Tarot. But Richard Roberts actually writes the bulk of this book, the part called the Esoteric Tarot. And the whole entire thing is not literally about alchemy and the tarot, but he does, spend a lot of time sort of discussing the relationship between the Rider-Waite-Smith deck specifically and the alchemical processes. But he also goes into detail about, just esoteric stuff about the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. He'll talk about its correlations with astrology and alchemy and sort of this amazing way he has of jumping around the tarot when you lay them out in a spread of 9. So look, he's got back here. Oh my god, I'm not making much sense, but when you lay the cards out like this in this specific way, there's some really, really interesting things that happen both alchemically, astrologically, and numerologically. So this book can be a little tricky to find. I had to find it through a third party on Amazon, but it is doable. So if this is something you want to sort of get into, this is a good sort of breakthrough because it talks about alchemy, but it also utilizes the Rider-Waite-Smith deck specifically. Real quick, he did actually write another book too. What's his name? Richard Roberts. This is one of the first books where it's, it gives tarot readings. This is like recorded sessions that he had from his tarot readings. So also a very cool book. And then I think there are a lot of other books out there too where you don't necessarily have to go back, right, and read the old alchemical texts. You can 100% do that, and I think that's amazing, and I enjoy doing that, but they can be very hard to understand. So I think it's great that there's other books out there that just sort of talk about things like this, right? Like it's about alchemy and the alchemical process, but it's more about how you're going to take those ideas and put them into practice in your life. So I do recommend this one. I really enjoyed this. It's called The Alchemist's Handbook. It's by John Randolph Price. Let me just read this to you. It's all about creating an ideal life where all you have ever wanted is brought into material form and physical experience. It's about taking these alchemical sort of chemistry ideas and putting them into use in your life. That's what alchemy is really, really all about. It has very little to do with the sort of chemistry of it all. And I think that idea sort of turns people off to learning about alchemy sometimes. But anyway, I'm gonna stop there. That is my review of the Alchemical Tarot. Thanks, guys. See you next time.